So just a quick introduction for anyone who doesn't know Francesca yet. Francesca finished her MA at the RCA in 2022 with distinction and has had numerous prizes, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but this is your first solo show in London.
Yes.
Congratulations. Thank you. Now, I have to see one thing that interested me from her first line of her bio is a German-American visual artist. Now, that kind of piqued my interest because I'm also German, but I wouldn't be able to sound it. But the idea of being German in America is something that has suffused a lot of Francesca's work, and I find even in the show, we come through to family and where you come from and origins and where you grow up. And I just wondered if you could take us back to maybe the first image of the ones that we have here. Like, how did this body work start for you in terms of coming through as a young woman growing up in your family and into the church community, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. So, firstly, thank you all so much for coming. And I also wanted to thank you quickly, Christiane, because I feel like I took you on a very weird journey, and you were so down for it.
I'm down for it.
And I feel so blessed is an apt term to have found you and connected with you, and you're so down to earth, and really I just feel like you've been such a great mentor through this whole process to me, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And yeah, so how the work began.
Yeah.
I just graduated the RCA, had no idea what I was supposed to do with my life, and there was this opening to go to this workshop with Antoine Agata in Arles. And one of the residents who was there with me at this workshop is here tonight, Jack. And the first images were made in Arles. And I had never really thought I'd be able to broach this subject of religion and how conservatively I grew up. But Antoine is someone who really lovingly pushes you, you know, and he was really encouraging me to do weird things, go into churches, steal stuff, take self-portraits. He's like, as long as you don't tell them I'm telling you to do it, I don't care what you do.
Well, I think the word that you actually just put in your press release as well is semi-blasphemous things to do and to make images. You know, that's quite a strong word. That's like a sin. That's a crime, blasphemy. But you know, you're really pushing it in terms of the things that you composed and wanted to do. I would say that the word that we've talked about this week a lot is provocation, provoking, and I actually couldn't quite remember where provoking came from, but I didn't do Latin, so I did look it up. But I mean, fourth, voco, I call, I summon, I beckon, I designate, I invoke, I call upon a person, a god, I convene, I call together, and I bring or I put in a state or condition. And I kind of thought this word, provocation, is something that for me resonates through the script tonight. And that it also, provoking is, you know, incitement, it's arousing, stimulating something. So I think a lot of the themes that come through tonight, you know, how do you feel about that word as kind of a more playful call to arms, and all the layers that could inspire for you?
I mean, I think the work changes a lot depending who's looking at it. And I think my photography practice, after I had a falling out with documentary work, it shifted a lot and became a lot about self-portraiture. And when I think about provoke, and specifically tying that word to the Christian community that I grew up around, I think about the first time I ever showed a nude self-portrait in San Diego, and I was getting threats on Facebook, in Facebook Messenger, from family friends that were die-hard Catholics telling me I'm going to go to hell, how can I show my body like this in public? And I think all of those things just kind of emboldened me to push it further. And it also, I mean, the self-portraiture and the photography in general has always been a sort of salvation for me. Because these aren't themes that you discuss with the people that impose them on you. especially when you're the child and you're not coming from a position of power. You're not allowed to question what's being told to you. So I think, yeah, it's my way of provoking, but also there's a real playfulness to it that's important, because I don't want it to ever get too serious.
Well, also it comes into your wanting to collaborate with people. So tell us how your collaborations have evolved. That's something that quite a good way into the work for other people to see themselves in the different friends that you brought in, or maybe not friends. Can you tell me more about your collaborators?
So, I mean, most of the people who aren't me in the series are people I've known for a couple of years. A lot of them are also photographers or artists. And I think it takes a certain type of person to agree to be covered in sugar, or like, can you just like get half naked and like lean on these graves real quick? Like, it's fine. And
pretend that you're floating.
Yeah.
Wearing underpants. Yeah.
But those experiences were really important, and I think also the conversations I would have with people while photographing about spirituality, their upbringing, and the way that it shaped them is really important. And I've even seen that this week, you know, the anecdotes people are sharing with me.
Well, you are like the confessional artist. Like we are. Please come back tomorrow and find a quiet spot, or you know, there are lots of little rooms. This is happening all week. It's quite something. Yeah. But you're also. You said that the images were incredibly enjoyable to make. I mean, I feel the joy. Okay, so we were together here in this corner in the summer, and this is a site-specific work. And it was fun, and it was, you know, it was spontaneous. And it was actually something that, what are you doing? You know, but it was something that you must think about these things all the time. Are you planning your next works at the moment?
I mean, I have some proposals written, and I want my work to get more socially engaged. And I think like some of this work has prepared me for that. But when we were doing this, I was so nervous. I would like to do that with you, really. But I think it's a great bonding experience to take pictures like this with people. You know, that's like not.
I pushed the button.
Yeah.
Finally.
To be fair.
After all these years. Well, I mean, I was thinking about your collaboration, and also, you know, this could be, you know, everyone in this room could have a story to tell. You know, this could be something that continues throughout your whole life. You know, is that something that you see possibly doing? You know, or is there a time in the future that, you know, maybe you hope you will no longer feel like you need to push against the church and the religion? You know, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I've said a couple of times to a few people that I feel like the series could go on forever, because I think that upbringing doesn't really leave you, and I think it's always really going to affect my worldview. But then at the same time, the series has given me some great experiences, and even just this last week, I met an amazing reverend who was really opening up my mind with the way that she accepts queer people into her congregation. And so maybe the series ends by me finding a spiritual home that accepts me. That maybe is like a really Disney way of hoping it'll go, but yeah, maybe there's a peace to be found, and then the images won't need to be made anymore.
That's very interesting. I mean, there's also something we talked about women in the church, about women making images about their experience and in faith communities. You know, the women's position in church has been a traditional position for a very long time. You know, how do you feel as a young woman in the church? You mentioned in terms of your family upbringing, your matrilineal kind of age limit. You have this limit in your head about you said you're the first person in your family that isn't married at this age, and everyone else in your whole family has been.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's probably like a pretty common experience for women of either my generation or the generation right before us to be the first woman that isn't married in her like late 20s, early 30s. I think, yeah, my relationship to being a woman in the church, I think that was the most damaging part. the rules that are enforced on you. And I mean, I had a promise ring as a teenager before I even really knew what that meant. And I told you recently that I'm starting to categorize those things in my mind as abuse rather than just something that like happened. Yeah, I don't know how to really reconcile those things, because also, you know, in this one image where I pose as Eve in the church, I'm trying to accept this role of all women being labeled as Eve, as the source of all evil, you know, as the temptress that is the fall of mankind. And I want to own that, be like, yeah, so what? Like, maybe I'm Eve. Get over it. I don't know.
Well, you
yeah, it's
said this
ongoing.
phrase, I want to take back the power. Like, I want to take it back to myself.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Because I was never really ashamed, I think, to be a woman. It was something that was like they were trying to force it down my throat to be ashamed. Yeah, and it's very uncomfortable. And where does that come from? And I think a lot of Christians that I was surrounded by are just huge hypocrites. They don't have to adhere to the rules that they force you to adhere to, right? So also having that conversation with those people, I think, is really valuable. You need to be like, why do you need to control what other people do? What about what's wrong with you that you're doing that? I mean, not to get too psychological, but.
No, it's very interesting. I'm going to be interested in the next decade, living outside of the U.S. possibly for you to see how those conversations go for you.
Yeah.
In terms of your new commandments, in terms of which ones might be the most relevant. I wanted to ask you also a few questions about a couple of the images that might need a bit of unpacking. I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about two of them, for example, the baptismal candles in the mounds of dirt, and then also the clerical collar and things on them.
Yeah.
I think we might enjoy hearing a bit more about that. Tell us a bit more about the baptismal candles.
Yeah. So my sister went to college down the street from the church I was baptized in. And I begged her to go by and get a replica of my baptismal candle, which she did, and she brought it home. And I carried it around in my suitcase for about a year until I really knew what I wanted to do with it. And my original idea was that the candles are all kind of being extinguished while being lit. I always forget about gravity and physics when I'm taking pictures, so that didn't really happen. But the first candle, the baptismal one, is being extinguished while lit. So if you look at it really closely, there's water splashing off it despite it being lit. And I think that's kind of a representation of maybe the cycle of faith for some people, how it can come in waves, spirituality.
But when would that baptismal candle normally be lit in life?
Yeah, I mean, baptismal candles, obviously when you're baptized, if someone becomes really ill, and they're prayed over, they'll light them.
All right.
And then the final day that a baptismal candle is lit is when someone dies. And then that's when the candle is burned to its end. So it's a real representation for the soul.
And why are they on mounds of dirt?
So the artist, Anna Mignetta, is a huge inspiration for me. And she has those amazing images where she puts herself into these graves. My original intention was to dig a grave, and that didn't really work either. So the dirt went up instead of down.
Gravity.
Yeah. It's a real problem.
Gravity sucks.
Yeah.
Wow. No, thank you for that. Now, could we talk about the clerical collar and the names?
Yeah.
The first time I saw that as a JPEG, I thought it was so small. It was like a little design, and then the names are quite important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everyone is kind of aware of the huge scandal that rocked the Catholic Church, where those lists of priests who had sexually abused children and adults came out. Experts estimate that abuse is actually far more rampant in the Protestant community in the US, but there hasn't been the same kind of reckoning. And I was poking around online just trying to figure out if there had been any accountability by the Protestant community in the United States for the same kind of crimes. And I found this list published by the Southern Baptist Church of priests who'd been convicted of abuse. And I decided to save the names and print them onto cloth and cover the clerical collar. And I don't really usually work around these ideas of data and information, but it's really scary that there's this list on the internet and one day they could just delete it. And I'm trying to make it more permanent. But also during that shoot, I had a priest come up to me, because we did it outside of a church. And he asked us if we were shooting pornography, which was so weird. And I was like very calm. My friend was freaking out. I was like, no, it's a photo project, it's fine. And I narrate that encounter in the audio piece, which is in the center.
Can you tell us more about what's in that audio piece? Because there's also a bit of German Lord's Prayer in there.
Yeah. So it's really long. It's like 19 minutes and small like memory fragments or even just like ramblings from things I remember being taught as a child, songs, prayers, but also new things that I found. There was a prayer that I found published by a church in Texas in 2015, basically praying away the gay.
Oh,
and I recite not the prayer itself, but their reasoning behind the prayer in the audio piece.
Wow. And lastly, I wanted to know how it feels to eat all those communion wafers. Have you seen the video? There's some kind of white, like, that is, it's not a loop, it's just eating.
Yeah.
It's just eating. So tell me what did that feel like for you?
It was disgusting. But like putting myself through slightly like uncomfortable or painful situations is a huge part of the self-portraiture. I struggle a lot with kind of like disassociating out of my body, and when I take pictures of myself or make work with my body, I feel so present in my being.
Is that part of phototherapy?
Yeah. I'd attribute that to kind of the therapeutic effects of the work that I do. So
That's something that you kind of taught yourself or read about that you said, oh, I'd like to do this, or how did that kind of practice evolve for you?
So I didn't really know that there was a word for what I was doing. I very much like fell into fine art out of a different kind of setting. Like I majored in chemistry in undergrad, and I didn't have the terminology for the art world for a lot of things. And I started taking self-portraits when I was 13. And again, I think it was like a survival mechanism. Like I'm here, I'm in control of my body, I'm deciding what's being done to it. And then when I got to the RCA, I started reading about Joe Spence and all of these other practitioners, and I was like, other people do this? It's like a legitimate thing. Oh, okay. And yeah, it was really validating.
Are they mostly female artists that you've been inspired by?
Almost exclusively. Like, I think some of my students are here, and I gave like a short talk about phototherapy, and at the end I was like, oh shit, sorry, I didn't include any men in this presentation. And they were like, no, that's fine. So I just like naturally gravitate towards like female identifying artists.
Okay, I mean, I could talk to you another week, but I have one question, if you don't mind, but in terms of what is sacred, what is the taboo, have you thought about doing some things and kind of said, no, I'm not sure I want to do that? Is there, can we talk about the borders and how you feel about pushing against that word blasphemous,
Yeah.
the difference between provoking and being blasphemous, how do you navigate that? Because it's quite emotional territory.
Yeah. I think, and I spoke about this a bit with the Reverend that I met with earlier this week. There's like still a boundary, and it's about still respecting other people's boundaries, and it's about consent, and I don't want to do anything that makes someone really uncomfortable and harms them. There's some images that I self-censored in the series because the people that were involved in making them asked me not to show them, right? So there's always that conversation. For me personally, I think nothing is really like out of bounds.
Nothing's out of bounds.
The way that I push myself.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe when I'm speaking about the work, I have boundaries. But in making the work, if I have an idea I want to achieve, I will just like push myself there. But I think it's about, even still when I'm working inside churches and stuff, respecting and making sure it's productive, making sure the conversation I'm trying to have through the images is productive and isn't just like, hey, fuck you for really like ruining my childhood in a lot of ways. that's not really what I'm interested in, you know, because I still do hold that faith, and I still long for that community, and I don't want to hurt people just because it hurt me. Does that make sense?
No, I think that I think everyone here can see that that's kind of shining through. It's you know, it's not piss Christ. It's not telling people. Yeah, well, okay, well, very provocative, but you know, like, yeah. I mean, I have so many questions to ask, but maybe I'd love to open it up to other people as well. Otherwise, we're going to talk another week.
Okay. Hello. I've been thinking a lot about the context of the space that you've curated the exhibition in. Like, it's a perfect homage to the things that you want to discuss, like the religion and all of this, and even the idea of being in the crypt, being underneath it all, almost like being a woman subjected to that like lower status, or the queer bodies that are hidden beneath the reality of the public space. And I was just wondering about, in terms of the future of this project, do you think the space that it's presented in really lends so much to the exhibition as a whole? Or would it be something that you find really interesting to place in like a contemporary gallery?
Very good question.
I think I, like, in a way, now gravitated a lot towards trying to show it in the church, so above ground. So I'm really trying to push that, and I'm collaborating with Josh, who's here. I'm trying to push that forward. I mean, I'd be happy for it to be in a contemporary space, but I think what's great about spaces like this is I don't know, I worry less about like the colors and the images clashing with one another, and those kind of like more, those kind of questions, like aesthetic questions. Yeah, I mean, I'd also love to see it as a book, I think, is the form that I want to go towards, with more writing and like little testimonials also from other people, whether anonymous or not, to really like flesh out the experience.
Well, I think so. I mean, but this is an edit, and also in one of the video pieces that is you washing the picture of your parents' wedding, grandparents' wedding, grandma's wedding in ink off your back. I mean, that has so much symbolism. There's so many different other strands of, you know, how your family raised you and your role in the family and the community, you know, and sexuality, you know, it's a gender experience and sexuality experience and being a young woman in community experience, and I just think there's so much more to see. I can't wait to see the next iteration. Now I want to pick a favorite commandment on the way out, but can I just say, remember to question the holy. Okay, that's one of our new commandments on the way out. And also, thou shalt play humorously. So I think on that note, we would love to invite you to finish our beer and our wine and our snacks, and